In this video today, I want to show you how important it is to lock in bass and guitar tones together if you want a big, powerful mix. What I'm finding more and more is that people are mistaking what they call a guitar tone for what's actually bass tone. And I'm bringing you right into a session to show you firsthand how much a song can fall apart and lose power when we get rid of the bass. So before you kick your bass player out of your band, you might want to watch this video and see how important their role is in making a big mix. Hey, what's going on YouTube? My name is Bobby Balo, and I'm the mixing and mastering engineer at Raytown Productions. This channel is dedicated to helping you make better sounding music out of your home studio. And if you're new here, you better hit that subscribe button because I drop new videos every single week to help you level up the quality of your music. As a thank you for your time and attention today, I actually have a free gift for you. So if you take a look in the description of this video, you'll see a link to download a guitar cabinet impulse response that I made right here in my studio of my orange 212 cabinet behind me. It sounds pretty awesome, great for rock and metal if you're looking for a nice, thick, mid-forward tone. So if that sounds interesting to you, go and check that out and grab your free download. So this session is from a band called Every Hour Kills. This track is called Reawaken, and you can actually download all of these multi-tracks yourself if you want to see what the full session looks like. I have links to all that in the description. It was recorded, produced, mixed by my good friend Alan Laskow, so shout out to him for letting me use this in this tutorial. So let me give you a quick sample of what the song sounds like. We'll go right to the chorus because it is a banger. So you probably hear that guitar tone, right? It sounds massive. Let's hone in on it. I'm just going to solo the guitar tone. But that actually has the bass in it. You want to hear what the guitars actually sound like? Let me play it again. That's what the guitars sound like. All the energy, what might have been construed as powerful guitars, is actually all from that bass tone. Let's listen to the bass by itself. And if we go back to the guitars, you can hear that they actually don't have like any of those bass frequencies. It's actually really thin sounding. But together, so what I'd like to do now is to actually go into my settings for the bass and the guitars so I can show you how I'm able to blend these two together so that they sound seamless. We'll start with the guitars. So this song is actually just all DI tracks. And if I bypass everything, it sounds like this. Now, the amp sim that I'm using on this is one by Bogren Digital. It's called Rev C. It's so easy to use. You just turn this knob to this little scratch mark and it sounds awesome. Check it out. That's all I had to do. Next up, I did what is classically called the Andy Sneap trick. So this is just putting a multi-band compressor on this guitar bus. And I'm just having this bottom band activated to pull out any of the woofy low energy. This is super important because you get a lot of cabinet resonance and it builds up in these low bass frequencies on the guitar where the guitar really doesn't have any reason to have those frequencies in the first place. That should be taken care of by the bass guitar. So we're going to tighten that up. So let me show you what that sounds like. Okay, that's too much. Now we're pulling out too much of the natural energy of the guitar, so I want to back this off. And it's a good idea to have a little bit of attack to let a little bit of that initial transient punch through on those guitars. And I always tend to have a really fast release on this because I just want the compressor to go in, pull down any of the woofy stuff, and then get out of the way. And so to do that, you want a fast release. So something like that, that is perfect to me. What I also have is a sidechain compressor, and I have a whole video dedicated to all my crazy sidechain tricks. I'll put a link to that up here. But basically, this is just triggered to the vocal, and it pulls out some of these muddy frequencies. You're not going to hear any of that working in this intro part because there's no vocal. But if you want to go deeper into how I do that, like I said, check out that video. And then finally, I just have a limiter at the end. And this is just to make everything a little bit more consistent. So I'm just barely reducing any level. I just want to make sure that the level's hitting about the same. I don't want to use this too much because you'll start taking away that initial transient or the initial attack of the guitar. So just something to lock it in so that it sits a little bit better in the mix. Now I want to bring your attention to some EQ moves that I've also done. I'm not using anything fancy here. I'm literally just using the stock EQ built into Cubase. All I'm doing is just 2 little notches here in the bass region of the guitar, and I'm actually rolling off a ton of low energy. Check this out, 110 hertz. Okay, so let me show you what it sounds like without that. Now, it might be a little difficult to hear that, but basically, you just want to listen for the length of those chugs. When you don't have this high-pass filter enabled, the chugs take a little bit longer for those low-frequency waveforms to complete their cycles. So by rolling this off, you get a little bit tighter, crisper feel to those chuggy parts, which I really like. All right, let's check out the frequencies I'm notching out of the guitars. The first one is this at about 125, and this is not just some magical frequency. This happens to be where that cabinet resonance is on these guitars. So let me show you how to find that. You just take one of your parametric bands. You want to make a nice sharp Q. So I think maybe a Q of 8 is a good starting point. And you're going to just search for where that woof sound is. So right here, you hear every time there's that palm mute, there's this like wah, 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 right? That's where we're going to cut, right there. And you hear it just cleans that up a little bit more. It just makes a little bit more room for the bass guitar to fill those frequencies and define the bass. Okay, there's one more spot. It's a little bit higher up, and I tend to make a cut around this 200 hertz region, usually to let the snare drum punch through a mix a little bit more. Guitars have a lot of 200 in there, and this way, it just puts a little bit extra room for the snare drum. It's also kind of like a really woolly sound to me. It's like, it just kind of smears the sonic image of the guitars in general, right around 200 hertz. So something like that. Okay, so what we've effectively done now is put in a lot of extra room for the bass to then fill up those frequencies. So let's take a look at the bass tone that I have. I'm using this awesome bass distortion plugin by Aurora DSP. I made a review video of this years ago. This thing is just really good, especially if you're doing more aggressive styles of music like rock or metal. I'm going to bypass everything so you hear what we started with. It's just a bass DI. Okay, let's turn on the Mammoth. I mean, it's just insane how cool this thing sounds. And there's a bunch of different distortions you can play with too. But for this track, I like a little bit more of that scooped sound, so this blue distortion is what I'm going with. I rolled off a little bit of low end, a little bit of mids, and then I cranked the high end because with a dense metal track like this, we really need to have that high end energy to blend and mesh in with the guitars. It's just going to help reinforce the dirt and the grit of the guitars and make them feel a little bit more aggressive. Okay, so something like that. And if we listen to the guitars with the bass, listen to what happens to the aggression of the guitar tone when we have all the high energy rolled off. And if we listen to just the bass again, so it just adds a little bit of texture and width to the mix in general. Something I highly recommend if you have access to a bunch of different impulse responses, to just jump through them and see which one blends the best with your guitars. There's a bunch built into this plugin right here on the right side. And so I'll show you the process for that. So let's go pull the guitars back up. And then we're just going to jump through these and find something that seems to just make the guitars feel like one solid, powerful block of instrumentation. Here we go. I like the high-end snap of the 810, but this 610 is also a cool option if you want more of like that clanky style of bass. Okay, so now that we've picked our overall guitar tone and the cabinet IR, next step is to lock in the low energy of the bass. Okay, we want it to be a solid, controlled, powerful punch of bass. So I'm using FabFilter Pro MB for this. Basically, I just have a few different bands, and this is all going to change depending on how your song is arranged. So just use this as basic guidelines. But I tend to put a sub band around 120 hertz. Then I have this like low mid band. This is usually like for clarity. This goes from about 120 hertz up to almost 900 hertz. Okay. And then finally, I have this just to kind of knock down any of the aggressive, like pick attack, snapping sounds. Okay, without this. So the way that I have this set up is, let's start with this band first. So this is all the sub information. What I tend to do is bite into it with the threshold a little bit so that we're getting anywhere from like 3 to 5 dB of gain reduction. That number can change depending on your music, but basically it's a good starting point so you can hear the control that it's adding to the bass guitar. I open up the attack to let a little bit of the punch through that initial transient punch of the sub energy, and then I have a pretty fast release. What I like to do is actually boost up the output volume of this band so that when the compressor is compressing that sub frequency, it goes back to about 0. And what this does is this is going to keep the low energy a little bit on the aggressive side, a little bit higher, but on average, it's going to keep it dead center to where it was naturally. Okay, so if you don't offset that output level, the sub energy gets kind of quiet. I want it to be really aggressive. This is a very modern song. This middle band sounds like this. This region is super important for small speakers, so you don't want to just EQ all of it out. You want to basically just glue it and lock it in and then lower the overall volume enough so that it doesn't feel like it's muddy, right? Or that the image isn't really small. So I did basically the exact same approach I did for this sub band. Okay, we're just going to bite into the bass a little bit, pull that energy down until it feels like we have a little bit more control. Again, I have the attack a little bit slower, so we let that punch through, fast release, and then I offset that output volume so that we're finding a sweet spot where the tonality feels right. So let me show you what I mean. So if you pull too much of this out, you have a very scooped sound. This is what it sounds like in the mix. If we push this up, you're now filling in that hole that was in the middle of the mix, right? It's almost like the bass is getting closer and closer to the listener. So you just want to find that sweet spot where it feels like the bass is in line with the guitars, but they still feel nice and wide. And for me, it's about right here. But depending on how you mix and all that and what you're going for, you can change that. Finally, this last one is just to catch any of the annoying, sharp pick scraping sounds. Sounds like this. Again, I have a pretty loose attack on this. It just lets that initial snap go through because, again, this is a very modern sounding song. If you want to clamp down on that, like it's jumping out of the mix too much, just lower this attack, make it a little faster. And that'll smooth out that top end of the bass. And then we can set the final overall level of this band using our output knob. Okay, way too much, right? Back it off. Sometimes this is really cool to roll off the top end. That puts a little bit more room for the vocals. But the way this mix comes together, we want to keep this nice and aggressive up here. So something like that. And then finally, the last step is just to put a limiter on it, clamp it down, restrain it from getting too rowdy. And I'm using Waves L2. I like this way better than L1. It's a lot cleaner sounding to my ears. And I'm just going to catch the topmost peaks. We're only doing a dB or two of gain reduction. Okay, you put these all together. This is what you get, guitars plus bass. Without the bass. With bass. I really want to drive home the importance of actually putting in a little effort in the bass guitar tone. I feel like a lot of modern producers tend to be guitar players. They spend all this time dialing a guitar tone and then they just neglect the bass and just smash the DI with a limiter or something. Spend a little bit of time and effort and energy into getting a nice full bass tone that complements the song and, more importantly, complements the guitars. And then that's when you're going to have a very big, powerful, dense mix. If you try to force low end into guitars by themselves, it ends up sounding flubby and fake, and it just will never end well. So on your next song, I would challenge you, try to spend a little bit more energy and time into dialing in a really powerful bass tone to complement your guitars, and let me know how it worked out for you. So let me know in the comments what you thought of this video. Was this eye-opening to see how much the bass actually makes an impact in the overall mix? And if you have a better way of adding power and energy to a dense rock track or a metal song, please also let me know in the comments. I want to remind you that you can go to the description and also download those free cabinet impulse responses that I made. That's a free gift for you for hanging out with me today. I want to thank you so much for your time and attention today. My name is Bobby Balo, and I hope to see you in another video.